Gwan, are you there? What's good? And you know who this is, baby. The #1 podcast in America, dedicated to all you kings and queens of color, homies and homettes, shotters, woo gals, G-boys, and charges. The one and only Jerk Jollof and Collard Greens podcast.
Wagwan, are you there? What's good, y'all? It's your host and humble extrovert, G, aka G Ransom on Insta. And on today's episode, the fellas and I will share our take on the slap heard across the world. Yes, we're looking at you, Will and Chris. And for our official chop session, we've invited commercial real estate investor, friend of the pod, and founder of Heritage Toy Group, Seyi Fadamiro, to chop with us as we aim to discern whether investing in real estate is the move to make in light of the real estate market and cost of living conditions being set at a pretty much all-time high compared to the last couple of years. So whether you're looking to become a first-time real estate investor, interested in building generational wealth through real estate, or a seasoned investor plotting your next move in these seemingly arbitrary market conditions, then be sure to keep it plugged into the world's most cultured podcast for all this and more right after we pay these tributes. Additionally, if you're not a follower, perhaps tuning in for the first time, be sure to follow us on IG at Jerk Jollof Collard Pod to join the JJC community, or subscribe to the pod on your streaming platform of choice to stay in the know when we drop our next episode. Before we dig into the drama at the Oscars, we'd like to double down on the positive vibes by dedicating this episode's Rep Yours to Black Girls with Green Thumbs. Black Girls with Green Thumbs is a community-based organization focused on urban gardening and community engagement. Through gardening workshops, online engagement, and community programming, Black Girls with Green Thumbs is growing a community who garden in their homes and within their communities to heal, nourish, and learn. Black Girl with Green Thumbs promotes health literacy in a way that is culturally competent and accessible, meeting community members where they are, online, and within their neighborhoods, and inviting them to new experiences like home gardening, plant-based cooking, and even health-inspired getaways. You can get in touch with the leading ladies behind this organization or stay in the know on upcoming events by contacting them via email at programs@blackgirlswithgreenthumbs.org, by their website, blackgirlswithgreenthumbs.org, or on IG and Facebook at Black Girls with Green Thumbs, and that's all one word. And personally, I've attended their Valentine's Day couples yoga this past February in Philly, and it was lit. Like actually my first time ever doing yoga, and now I'm trying to include that in my overall wellness routine. Basically, it was like a mix of yoga and R&B, which actually made a really good combination paired with our very talented instructors. And it really just amplified the entire experience. My partner and I truly enjoyed it. We learned some new tricks of the trade, so spice up your life, and see if you can get one of those events one of these days. And be sure to check them out on Eventbrite as well at Black Girls with Green Thumbs. You can stay apprised of when their next events are upcoming and stay in the know like I did. All right, fellas, we have all 5 members of the podcast on today. Dre is over here relinquishing his daddy duties to chop with us today. And we're just excited to have you on, brother. I know you can never get rid of being a dad, That's a fact. So he's coming to fulfill his role as dad of the pod today, taking care of his other sons. But also on the line, we've got D Black, Chunky, and Francis. How are y'all fellas doing today? I just want to check in with y'all before we get into.
I was going to say, I just missed Stray, man. Welcome back.
Machete. Welcome back.
Busy. I'm tired, but I'm happy to be here, especially today's podcast. I feel like with the cost of Pampers and formula, I feel like I'm going to need to be thinking about some investments to. I hope. I got my pen and paper ready. We're going to need as much information as possible because all this stuff ain't cheap.
We got some heat on the line right here. I mean, they say buying a home is probably what the most expensive asset that you'll ever purchase, but everyone sleeps on diapers and formula though. Like it should be right there in between somewhere. Like seriously, that shit is expensive. All right, fellas, let's talk about it. you haven't heard by now, yes, Will Smith smacked the mess out of Chris Rock at the past Oscars, right? So we all know what went down. And I've been asked by so many people to talk about this. And even though it's probably like a week and change late, all opinions are still valid. There's always going to be new opinions, right? There's people coming out of the woodworks giving their opinions on this thing.
There's opinions on opinions.
There's opinions on opinions. Even Jim Carrey gave an opinion. I'm like, Jim Carrey, you need to go somewhere. You were over here, riddled on drugs somewhere this past few years. But you know what? Anyways, this is how we're going to do it. Because there's so many of us. And Shay, if you want to get in, let us know in the chat. If not, you can wait for your time to shine. But if you want to, it's all good. So I want to see first, who is for or pro Will slapping Chris? If you're for Will slapping Chris, say aye real quick.
Is it pro violence or pro Will?
Pro consequence?
I'm pro violence. Yes.
Okay, so we got one pro slap. Who else is pro slap?
Man, I know my cousin.
I'm surprised. I mean, we talked about this in the chat a little bit. I
think if you asked me on Sunday when it happened, I was definitely pro slap and was definitely on the bandwagon that he should. I understand why he did it and all that other stuff, but as more details kind of came out about kind of Chris Rock and some other things, I kind of felt really bad about it. So I'm not necessarily pro the slap, but I am pro consequence. I got to be pro consequences, right?
We're going to group you in with Chunky.
I guess that'll be fair.
Now let's pass the torch to our guest Shay. Shay, are you pro or against the slap? Against. All right. So who's all that are for the against the slap? Raise your hands or just say aye.
I am definitely against slap.
Yeah. All right, so here's how we're going to do it. I'm going to give a moment for the people that are pro slap to give their argument, and then I'm going to pass the torch to the fellas that are against the slap to give their argument, and then we'll try to find the middle ground in this situation, all right? So, fellas, Chunky, Dre, pro slap, give us your take on the whole incident, why you're for it, why it was deserved.
I mean, it's not really deserved. Things happen. People have emotional moments, right? So as a man, this is like, I can't judge another man like, oh, you're wrong. You should have handled it a different way. He felt as though he did what he needed to do. He's going to suffer the results of the aftermath, and that's it. So he made that decision. I support him and him reacting the way that he did, and I also support the results of the punishment that he'll receive. He apologized, which is one step. A lot is going on with him, which are a few other steps, but like I said, I'm pro-violence. So if you get up and slap another man, I'm always going to stand up and applaud. But be ready to handle what comes after that.
Hey, Dre, do you have anything you'd like to add there, or do you concur? Do you corroborate everything that Sir Chunk is saying?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. Maybe I'm just, I'd like to say that I'm someone who's normally pretty calm or whatever, but I mean, I don't know. Sometimes, I think just me personally as a man, whenever I say something about another man's wife, I guess I'm always prepared that something, that he may not like what's said. And I normally don't speak ill about people's wives. I'm not a comedian as well, so I don't, I know it's kind of different in that respect. But if I just try to boil it down to like the basics, if someone says something about my wife that she was very kind of sensitive about, I don't know if I would have the most if I would be the most logical person in that scenario, right? Especially if it's something that that she's struggling with, if maybe they've had conversations about it before, I'm hearing all these things, one way or another, that it's not necessarily that specific. He said this and this is what happened. But from what I hear, that there was multiple conversations about this, like, chill, don't do this, whatever. So if all that stuff is true, then again, I'm not necessarily saying that I'm going to be slapping people while I'm, in the public like that. But at the time, I just kind of can see how it could happen. And again, I really don't want to be I really don't want to be supporting violence. I don't know how I got put on this side.
Right? I'm surprised, man.
Well, because I feel like Glenn set me up. I should have just said
nah, man. That chat was
Sunday.
You said he got what he got.
Wait.
Hold on. Let Dre get his.
I'm having my Francis moment. I'm switching sides, man.
You can't switch.
You can't
That's
switch.
I mean, Francis, how many times have you done it? How many times have you done it over the course of
I'm not picking both sides. I'm picking one
it's
side.
been a long time.
I'm not saying it's been a long time. I'm asking you, how many times have you done it? And for you to call someone out and if they can't do it, that's not right.
Couple times.
If it was last Sunday,
season 2.
I'll just say this: if it was last Sunday,
let Dre get it.
If it was last Sunday, I would 100% be with Team Chunky right now. But it's now been a week and a day. I feel like I've gotten enough information about it. I'm on the other side now. I'm sorry. I got.
Wait.
I mean, but my thing is to say, if you need someone to get slapped, just give me a call. I'll slap him for you. Don't worry about it.
Hey, there you go. He's like the fall guy. All right. So we've heard from Team Slap a Man. Now let's hear from Team, I guess, Pacifist. Isn't that funny how that works, pacifist?
Anyway, that doesn't make you a pacifist because you ain't going to run up and slap somebody nonsensical. Like, I'm just saying.
That's a rapper bars, man.
I just think it's a little bit crazy. I think the whole concept, the whole premise is crazy. Like, yeah, you're trying to defend, I think from a social perspective, this whole defend your woman's honor. Like, I get it, but, you know, first of all, comedy. I think comedy, in a sense, is dead. We could have a whole discussion about that. Comedy is dead because you can't make jokes without there being some crazy ramification for it. You get slapped. But then even on the premise of like, are you really, because of the fact somebody disrespected or said something verbally, you're gonna throw away everything? Like the consequences for you will be greater than the consequences for that person. Yeah, they get slapped, but yeah, you get jail time. You get fired from work. Is it really worth it? I don't know. Yeah, but Will Smith is a celebrity, so apparently he could go right back on stage and
he's rich. So he's not. You got to put yourself in this perspective. He's also not in our situation, right? So like, he technically is not going to get fired from any job, right? He has a lot of money.
I mean, he can't lose endorsement though. Yeah, I think he just quit.
Maybe, but
but he quit
like that. I just want to make sure there's like not to do too much, but you're also saying this, you being in your situation. So like, let's just say someone says something about your wife and she's very upset. Are you saying that like 9 times out of 10, you're always going to be in the most like sane mind? You're not going to kind of jump out the window and do something that maybe like you wouldn't do. Because that's the other thing that I think sometimes people aren't necessarily like putting enough thing on. I know we all love our wives and our partners, but I just really want to make sure that like we're really trying to like think about this is like, what if you're in that situation, right? Let's just say you're in that situation. Let's forget about work and all that other stuff. Right? I'm just saying, you put yourself in that situation. Some man disrespect your wife in front of you and you see that she's very upset and hurt about it, you're just going to be like,
he's going to
chill.
How are you going to know?
Wait, hold on.
At the same time, a perfect scenario as there's no consequence. Let's take all the consequences out of the equation.
No, he's not saying let's not take out the consequence. What he's saying is just like, if you're in that moment, you hear that and you see red, you're not going to think about the consequences. You're going to get emotional. You're going to be in the moment.
But so the question was, is it right or is it not right? If you see red,
hold on.
If you see red and lose your mind, that's
let's
fine.
Hear from the rest of the against the slap panel.
I'm just trying to clear it up.
We'll get back into it. So let's get back. Let's hear what Fran and Shay have to say, and then we'll jump into that question too, and then we'll have the dialogue. And then I don't think it's going to be common ground. If you can find it, we'll trample it. But if not, go ahead, Fran.
So I have a couple points. So I think the part that we have to be mindful of is setting the precedents, because with Will kind of going up there now, we are setting the stage for something else to happen. I think I saw a clip on IG. I didn't really dig into it to see what the backstory is, but I think there was a guy fighting the comedian on stage, like throwing chairs at him. So now that Will kind of started this precedence, he set the stage for it. Now, do people feel the privilege or the they're okay now. Feel like Will did it, now I could do it. Now don't say nothing about me. We know the award show are typically is a stage where you get roast, especially the people in the first few seats. When you stand up there, they come at you. So you already know what you're coming to the show to get, especially when you have someone like Chris Rock who is leading the show. So that's one thing. But another to Chunky's point, I understand what you're saying, because there was one moment we were at the bar and my wife told me, yo, this guy just called me the B word. And I was like, ooh. And I didn't even think about it. So I went straight to the dude. I was like, yo, I was about to straight go crazy. You know what I'm saying? And I had to like, this boy was apologizing. I'm so sorry. He's so drunk. I'm sorry about that. But yeah, so I understand what you mean. But I think sometimes when the setting is in, I don't know if I would have reacted in the same way if it was in that kind of setting though. So I think the setting does come into play as well. Like if you've been drinking. So I'm not sure if Will has been drinking or what is, if it was sober or not. So that's I guess a question we can also consider. But that's kind of like the few things.
Can I ask one
questioning
question?
his state of mind in the situation.
Can I ask one question? Could I ask one question? Okay, we can talk about like how he felt, his reaction, even if it's sporadic, all of that. But again, that does not excuse the action. You can be mad, you could be frustrated, you could defend your honor, but that doesn't mean that the action is okay. That doesn't mean that you should.
I'm not justifying
it. I don't think anyone on here is like justifying the action. We're just picking sides for the sake of picking sides. Like
no, but the counter was, yeah, but if you're in a fit of rage, you may slap somebody because you're angry.
I'm not saying it. What I'm saying is it happens. Not to say that it's justified, but it happens. That's it.
Mm. Well, let's Seyi get in here.
Let's Seyi get in. Throw his jabs in.
Yeah. I know. Good stuff, guys. So I think, obviously, I'm team nonviolence. This is 2022, and we as grown men and as grown Black men, even, right? We have to be able to make sure that we're able to control our emotions where it's necessary. So I think all of the points that was brought up is legit. The other side that I think is also good to mention is, Chris Rock's point of view, right? You guys remember, this was Everybody Hates Chris was based on his own life story, right? Of him being traumatized throughout school and all of that. So now imagine, how he felt, basically defenseless at that moment. Like, okay, what's really going on, right? So, and I think we have to give Chris a lot of credit for handling it the way he did, because just like we all said here, like, if that was me, if I was, I'm throwing bows, somebody is getting hit with something, right? And then even to that, like, the women also could also be, taking that, escalation as well. So, so I think, we have to kind of look at it from that perspective with the whole picture. It's not just Will's perspective, it's also Chris Rock's, because yes, he's a comedian, but, now comedians have to now start fearing for their lives or, standing the risk of getting hurt. I think that's a really dangerous precedence that we're trying to set. With that said, I do understand, Will, trying to defend his territory. I do still question the honesty, or if it's really genuine, because I say that because, these people are known to, put their lives out there, right? Jada has her own table talk show that she talks about a lot of personal things, right? A lot of, we've learned so much about their lives without us asking, right? And it's because that is what they wanted everybody to see, right? And so when you do that, when you expose yourself in that way, then you should be able to take a few jokes. And looking at, when I watched the show again, and I was like, come on. I mean, you can't be that sensitive, in those kind of situations. You have to be able to hold yourself. So I think he's harboring a lot of trauma, Will is. And I think, that's what it showed, right there on stage. So, that's all I have.
Well, you're saying
well
that
said.
comedians will fear for their lives. I was like, just carry. That's it. Someone tries to slap you, get popped in the kneecap. Done.
On to the next.
Wow. So now there's gonna be more than just one casualty. Everyone's popping off. I mean, I think that happened recently. Some guy tried to confront Mike Tyson at a comedy show, and he ended up brandishing a weapon. And I don't know what that was even about, but
I didn't say brandish. If you pull it out, you better shoot.
That's crazy.
That's it.
So, I mean, with that said, middle ground time now, y'all. I know we had a question that asked earlier, and I'll probably nail this one down before we actually jump into the discussion. If that happened to you, if your wife was disrespected or your partner was disrespected, how would you handle that situation? And I think when these questions are always posed that way, it's like any form of disrespect can be met with some type of retaliation, whether it's justified or unjustified, right? But to the point that Shay's making as well, that I agree with also, is that as men, we're supposed to have this understanding of control over our emotions, because with every action, there's a consequence and vice versa. But as you can see in this situation here, there are a lot more greater consequences than just the nature of the joke itself. So, which is why I myself would stand against that. I feel like, man wasn't made the most intelligent life form on earth for no reason, despite the fact that we have some fascinating examples of stupidity on the daily. The fact of the matter is, at the end of the day, both man and woman, not just men, are both able to reason and, look at situations and assess, is it really worth what I'm willing to evoke at this moment? And I mean, I feel like, yes, there are situations where you will have to use violence. You will, maybe not you personally, but there are maybe situations where in order to prevent further harm, I have to use some type of violence. Like if a guy breaks into my home, I don't know his intent. If I see he's trying to go after my family, I may have to use force. There's not going to be any reasoning there. You know what I mean? But that's also someone trespassing into your property. So it's just like, I feel like there's so many layers to it, but yet again, I'm not a married man and I'm not a celebrity. And I'm not sure what situations Will is going through, but we do know his life was made very public and so much not really in his favor. So he probably has a lot of demons he's unpacking. And I feel like we're fortunate because our demons haven't been made public. So with that said, I'm just saying, keep it peaceful, keep a measured state of mind. I mean, even if it is a guy drunk at the club, yelling obscenities, you got to think this guy's not in his right mind. And my thing is, like, if I strike someone, whether I feel it's justified or not, they end up dying as a result of that strike, I got to do jail time. You know what I mean? And nobody wants to hear, oh, yo, he called your wife a bitch, or, yo, he called you the N-word. It's just the fact that I took that action and now I'm held accountable with it. And I ain't sharing no cell with no man because of some nonsense like that, bro. That's crazy.
I mean, you just got to know where to hit him. That's it. Not all strikes end in death.
It don't matter.
It matters. I hear what you're saying. Everything can be resolved. Like the most powerful weapon you own is your mind, right? So you can verbally just de-escalate a situation that gives you greater power than choosing violence. At some point, some people only react to violence. So with that being said, I can go to someone, if someone's calling my wife like, oh, you're a bitch, blah, 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 fuck you, blah, blah, blah. It's just like, yo, dude, like, chill. Just stop. This is not in your favor. He keeps saying whatever. I just whisper sweet nothings in his ear and have him fear for his life. That's it. He'll get quiet. He'll stop. And everyone's looking like, what happened? To me, that shows a lot more power, force, and a level of intelligence that I made someone do something just by using my words than using my fist. But sometimes if someone wants to get froggy, I'll knock you back, knock you right out, you fitted cat.
Such sweet nothings. Sweet nothings. He said sweet nothings, yo. That's what we call it now. Okay.
Yeah, man.
Any other comments from either side? You want to try to find this middle ground, or is it take it or leave it?
I think for me, the last thing I'll say is, like, again, how you choose to react to someone else's, remember, consequences go both ways. So you can, however you choose to justify your action, doesn't matter. The consequences will always be the consequences, and they should be uniformal. So if someone makes a joke and you think that the consequences for you to take action or physically harm them, now you've escalated it. So then you have a consequence that is coming your way too, and it's appropriate.
I mean, my thing is if you could also just talk to the man behind the scenes too. It's not like he can't reach Chris Rock. Like we can't reach Chris Rock.
You can't give him a call.
If we bust a joke, if he busts a joke about us, that's a wrap. You just gotta take the L and go home with it.
Yeah, yeah. I mean,
there was another joke made about Will and Jada earlier that same day. Will didn't react that way.
I mean, I think we all know that. Yeah, you know, just the all jokes aside, we for the most part we should be trying our best to keep our hands in our pockets, right? If we can, right? I personally have not gotten into a fight since college, right? I don't know another situation where I can see myself getting into a fight. It's just it's just not really needed, right? But I'm just not going to. Me personally, I'm not going to say that another man shouldn't have done whatever he did, right? Men, we all talk about people being men, and right, we have our own choices, right? That's what he chose to do. I wouldn't have done it. But the way my brain works is I try to be empathetic on both sides. Initially, my brain was more on the empathetic side of Will Smith. I'm going to keep it 1,000%, right? In my mind, I'm just like, I wouldn't have done it, but I can see why he did it, right? Mm-hmm. I know that we're not going to go into full details about it, but I think they were okay with the jokes about their personal life. I think it was the jokes about kind of his wife's, hair. And I didn't realize she had alopecia, and there were other stuff about that. So, but yeah, I think the biggest thing is I'm not personally going to say what another man should or not do. He's going to have to live with those consequences. Just me personally, I wouldn't have done it. I would have tried to find another way to do it. But I saw that situation and I'm like, I understand why he did it, right? It's not right or wrong, right? Like, I'm just trying to be like, really like, just to, I tried as much as possible, try to be empathetic, right? And I could see that. And then I eventually learned all the stuff about Chris Rock and I felt really bad. So I kind of, really felt bad about that whole situation.
I think on that note, any other last comments?
I guess, sorry, for me, the last thing, imagery is a very, very powerful form of expression. So, the image that we saw of stage, remember we've always talked about Oscar so white, and now they're talking Oscar too black. So I think that's something that, we also need to keep in mind here. It's not obviously, we're talking about, on the personal level, but there's the macro as well. There's the big picture, which is, to me, the imagery that we saw there. We saw one black man, do an act of violence, whether justified or not, and you saw the other black man with showing restraint. So, and I think that's very powerful.
Facts. Well said. Now, let's see what other gems Shay has to drop as we get into our chop session on real estate. Shay, unmute yourself because you're about to get in and tell these people what it is you do, Mr. Moneybags, Seyi Fadamiro. Lay it down for us. Tell us about your investing experience, what you actually do, how you're involved in real estate, and when you got your start.
Yeah. Hey, guys. Thanks for having me. You guys have been a big fan of the podcast and since it started, so I appreciate it, the invite. So, Dre, I always like to say I have, I've got 3 boys, and the youngest one is 1 year old, so hang in there. It gets better with the lack of sleep and all that. But I'm going to share a little bit about my family. So I've got beautiful wife, my wife Mo, and then my 3 sons, Temidaya, Alalu, and Ayamikun. So shout out to you guys. You guys are my everything. But anyway, so my name is Seyi Fadamiro. I'm a real estate person, I guess, and basically, I manage a portfolio of different real estate assets. Whether it be property management for as a landlord, where we purchase assets and then we rent them out to tenants, and then we manage the portfolio that way. And then also we also participate in crowdfunding as well. We've contributed. When I say we, my wife and I, we've participated as limited partners in about 6 different projects, from 2018, and and some of them have exited, and we can talk more about that later. But basically, anything real estate, whether it be active or passive, chances are I've participated in one way or another. So yeah, but that's a little bit about me.
I bet. So if I understand correctly, to lay it down for the people one time in the back, you handle assets. So you do the portfolio management as well as leasing to tenants. So you're an actual landlord. And you also do crowdfunding for properties as well.
Yes, that's correct. Yes.
Bet. All right, awesome. So you guys are getting a wealth of knowledge to all our listeners out there. He's covered basically almost every aspect of it. So let's get into today's market. Would you say right now, and whether you're looking at it as an investing perspective or trying to be a landlord, is now an ideal time to buy? Yes or no, and
why? Well, it depends. I'll answer it like this. There's never an ideal time to buy, right? You never know where the true bottom is or where the true top is. So you just kind of have to, invest based on some solid principles that, if you just kind of rinse and repeat and kind of stay true to, your bread and butter, right? Whether it be, condos or single family. It's really more about having the right strategy. It's about doing your research, and just having the right fundamentals whenever you're looking to invest. I think that's a better target than trying to time the market. With that said, as we've seen the federal funds rate got increased by, a quarter point, and and they're going to keep increasing it. Probably, I think they're targeting about six movements before the end of the year. So where we are at this, increasing interest rate market, and so there's going to be, there are some talks about, there being a bubble brewing kind of thing, and basically, there's a lot of people that are buying assets that aren't worth what they are. There's a lot of risk that's, out there. People are, foregoing inspections, foregoing appraisal, with this whole, crazy seller's market. So I think you are going to see at some point the market take a pause. But like I said, I wouldn't necessarily try to get in trying to time the market. I would try to get in just based on solid, research and understanding, what you're doing, and also, having a strategy.
Bet. So basically, there's really no way, despite what the interest rates are, because if you ask any Joe Schmo on the street, they'll tell you, yo, interest rates are mad high, I'm not going to buy right now. But I feel like one of the things that people don't understand as well, and correct me if I'm mistaken, is that interest rates being what they are, like home prices also will correct themselves as well. Because I mean, we went to a point where we saw some all-time highs, these past few months, and then we saw because we had some really low interest rates as a result of the pandemic and COVID in the last couple of years. But now seeing this correction, a lot of people's concerns is that, basically I can't get in because the interest rates are too high. But that's not really what's the issue. It's just like, it could be just not understanding from an investor's perspective how to analyze a deal and what, I guess, fundamentals you need to have in mind as an investor, where you're looking to own the property or not before you even look into making that purchase.
Exactly. All right. And every asset is different. So, there's really, that's why you really have to have these fundamental principles of, okay, what is my rent to value ratio? What is my IRR? Having that strategy, for each property, I think that's more important than trying to, enter in at the right time.
Gotcha. So I guess can you tell us about your first acquisition, like how that experience went? And then we'll go into maybe some of the mistakes first-time investors make. But can you tell us about what your actual first acquisition was like, how that experience went?
Yeah, so I guess I should back up a little bit and, I kind of wear multiple hats, but so I'm an electrical engineer by trade. And, I work currently in the oil and gas sector. I work for a company called Hess Corporation.
Oh, yes.
And I serve as an electrical advisor for the Gulf of Mexico. But, outside of that, so my first exposure to real estate was So I graduated in 2009. Shout out to Auburn University, War Eagle. And I think that's right. You know, 2008 was when we had the financial market
Yes,
crisis.
sir.
You know, and, you know, I think, you know, homes lost, and some homes were seeing about 40% or 50% of depreciation of value at that time. So there were a lot of chaos that was going on. And you know, me, I was just coming out of college, you know, was just, you know, saving up a little bit. And, you know, the first, you know, I think 30,000 I had, you know, I was looking to purchase because I knew that right away that, okay, you know, this is the time to, you know, because it was clear as day that, hey, just like right now where everything is kind of going up so fast, you know, you kind of have a feeling like, okay, I should be more careful because we might be at the top, but it was kind of like that, but flipped, you know, back 2010. So my first property, I actually ran into issues with it because I couldn't get financing for it. And, you know, my first property was about $80,000. Yeah, I paid $80,000 for it. I had to put 20%, 25% down. And, but I had to go to 10 different lenders, and banks didn't want to touch the condo assets, because they were viewed as, you know, most risky because, you know, people were giving up, you know, people are losing their jobs. They would give up their investment property first before their primary home. So, you know, so the condos, no one wanted to touch it. So, but that was the only thing I can afford at that time. And so I ended up, you know, got lucky after my 11th try. I got, you know, finally got a credit union to finance, you know, that deal. And I think the interest rate was like 5%. You know, it was, I think at that time, the regular interest rate was 3.5. So I had to get financing on the business side. So I'm saying all this to say that, you know, there was a lot of struggle to actually make that first purchase. So I think, you know, but there was a lot of learning on, you know, on my part, you know, through that whole year that I was looking to make a purchase. And, you know, finally, you know, once I got that opportunity, then it just kind of took off from there. And, you know, we just started purchasing, you know, two additional properties every year. And before we knew it, you know, we had 10 properties under management. So yeah, so that's pretty much how I started in it. And it was I was a little bit lucky because I came in at the bottom of the market, and I was really able to take advantage of that natural growth whenever, you know, the assets recover the value. So that's the other thing. You got to have a little bit of luck behind you too, but the main thing is always, you know, just having, you know, solid financial strategy.
I think one of the main things you covered there as well, one of the key words was to save. And I think a lot of people's problems, especially within the Black community, is a lot of us are not saving. And basically, when you save, you actually put yourself in a financial position to make that purchase, because it seems like without that financial backing, you know, right, unless you're looking for partners and willing to give up a great portion of whatever you're going to be earning or that asset, right, it's going to be very difficult, you know, to get the financing that you need. And even coming from your background where you had the money, but just getting the additional financing was a hurdle as well. Imagine coming in with no saving. So also looking at some of the other mistakes first-time buyers make, what would you say are some others or some things that people shouldn't do so they can get in a position to actually take advantage of the market rather than waiting for the interest rate to drop to a miraculous low?
Yeah, I would say don't just get in on hype, right? Like you said, you know, personally, I think even before you start getting involved in partnerships and things like that, I would say, you know, actually get some exposure through it. You know, either buy your first home or, you know, have one investment, you know, by yourself first before you start trying to, you know, get into partnership, because there's a whole lot of, you know, complexities involved with that. And you know, we tend to react or act based on emotions. And then now imagine when you're, you know, working with 4 or 5 other partners with that same emotion, and it's just a lot of times you lose efficiency, you know, when, you know, through that. So I think the first thing is take your time, learn the market, and don't buy in on the hype. Don't kind of just go in and, oh, I heard somebody talking about flipping homes. Well, I have no, personally, I have no issues with, flipping properties, but that's not my bread and butter. I don't have expertise in that. There are a few things that you need to make sure you have in order to be able to flip properties. You need to have, reliable contractors, for example, reliable subs. And a lot of folks don't have that. And then they just go in there blindly, and then their first flip and they go in the negative. So I think don't go in just based on hype. Take your time and learn the process. Once you save up your money, then the rest of it is just due diligence. Don't buy in on the hype. Just kind of go in yourself and trust your instincts. But don't buy in on the hype.
So at this stage, would you say, I understand your first purchase was the condo, and even me personally, one of the things I'm interested in is owning is a small commercial multifamily. So like I live in Jersey. So the chances of that are, you got to have buku bucks to do that now. But other than that, is there a reason why you chose the condo? Was it just a price point, or were you looking at other properties, or were you looking at, this is my first unit? Because a lot of people will tell me, go to the multifamily, house hack. Was there a reason why you chose the condo? Was it just purely a financial reason, or was that just your preference?
Yeah, good question. It was financial, right? That was what was my price point at that time. But eventually, over time, we ended up focusing 9 out of 10 of our properties that we own now are condominiums that we own and directly actively manage. And then the remaining one is a townhouse. So it really over time became a niche because, I really was able to, in business, they talk, it's called economies of scale. So once you kind of own down on how to operate and manage one type of asset, then when you repeat it, then you're safe. There's a more efficiency that's as a result of that. So we ended up doing more condos. Also, the other reason is because so you have HOA fees that you pay, and that tends to cover everything on the exterior of the property. So that way it gives you, it basically you pay this fee and then it reduces your risk of, your tenant not taking care of those things. So it was also a way for us to reduce our risk as well by focusing more on condos versus single family. Now, the flip side of it is, condos tend to, they tend to kind of lag behind in the growth of the market. What I mean by that is right now you're seeing, all these homes, they're gaining appreciation at ridiculous speeds. I think, even in the South, we're seeing 25 to 30% year over year increase in value. That hasn't transferred as much over to condos yet. Condos are still about 10 to 15%, but eventually, condos will also take off as well because, again, that, the condos tend to be secondary investment or secondary property or investment property than single family. So anyway, yeah, long story short, it was just a financial decision, what I could afford, but eventually it ended up being, a form of strategy for us.
That I know one of the questions Dre had on house hacking and basically what that means. I mean, do you want to talk to that point a little as well, if you're familiar with that?
I'm house hacking. Okay, can you give me a little bit of
that? All right, so that's like more or less because house hacking basically is a strategy of real estate investing where let's say if I were to buy a 3-family or small commercial multifamily, the idea is that you would live in one of the units and then rent out the other unit to a tenant. So basically that rent that you're collecting would be hopefully would kind of just clear out your mortgage that you're paying on the property. Hopefully you get either break even or get some profit back. But in most cases, like especially in Jersey, where they say it's an equity play, and equity is the pretty much the value that your property earns over time, as opposed to what you paid for it. In certain markets or certain states could be certain conditions, right? You may get a property that you're house hacking, but you're not making money every month off of it. That does not make it a house hack. It's just that, you know, depending on how much you're paying for the property, which is important on analyzing a deal. And that's probably the next point that we'll get into, is how to analyze a good deal. Or how do you know when you have a good deal? That's basically the premise. So the hopes are the money you're collecting will kind of empty that mortgage and give you enough to kind of build a reserve to contribute towards reinvesting into the property or handling basic things like repairs and things like that. And that's the premise of house hacking.
Yeah. And that makes sense. Actually, my first property, I was living in one bedroom and then I had a roommate on the other. So,
house hack.
I guess I was house hacking out. That's actually the best way to kind of kickstart. You know, is being able to get that cash flow, and you know, in the business sense, you know, that would be seen as the rent that you're getting. That would be the cash flow coming in. And then on top of that, you're able to live in there as well. So I think that is, if you can, that's the sweet spot to be able, if you can get started that way. There's always, some risk associated with that. You know, for example, how familiar are you with your roommates? Are they more likely to cause damage and things like that? You know, as long as all of that is mitigated, then I think that's the right way to. I'm totally in support of it.
So it really just depends on everyone's scenario. Where you buy your property is a factor as well, because in some states it's more expensive than others. I think in New York you still could get a 1-bedroom now for $3,000 a month. And it's just like it's insane. But I guess considering the size of your portfolio, I guess you must have a knack for finding a good deal, essentially, because the way it comes down to, if you're trying to generate cash flow, it's all about how much you're essentially paying for on the property versus how much you're collecting. So can you talk about how do you analyze a property to know, okay, I should buy this? What are some things you think people should know? And then we'll drop into a question from Francis after that.
Yeah. So G, I think the most important factor to look at is your rent to value ratio. And I had a mentor that just dropped that in me, right when I started, and I always kept it. So basically, you want to try to collect for assets that are 400,000 or less in value. You want to try to collect close to 1% or better of the value of your home in monthly rent. So I'm gonna give you an example. If you got $100,000 property, then you want to try to be collecting $1,000 in rent per month. That's kind of like a good measure that, with that 1%, you'll be able to pay your expenses, pay your mortgage, and then also have a little bit of room left for you to, either reinvest or pay the loan off even faster. So I think that's probably something that I would say is most important when you're starting off.
Yeah, so I have a quick question. So you mentioned kind of getting your first home. When did you actually decide? When did you because I know in the Black community, we don't really think about like investing and stuff like that. That's not something that comes into, at least that we talk about as a young Black man. So when did you kind of figure out, this investment real estate stuff is really cool. I'm going to start actually getting more property. How did you come to that conclusion? And is this something you heard from other people you came across, or how did that came about for you?
Yeah, it's a little bit of everything. So I always had a natural inclination towards finance. Even though I went to school for engineering, my 3 main areas was engineering, finance, or music. And as an African, your parents are gonna put you towards engineering. So anyway, so I was, but I always looked at things from a business sense. So I always kind of coming out of college, I knew, okay, it's better to own a property than renting it. Basic things like that, right? So I always knew, like, okay, when I come out of college, if I have a job, I'm gonna, save up, and the first thing I'm gonna buy is, a non-depreciating asset, right? Which is the best non-depreciating asset out there is real estate. So I always, so I always knew that as well. But I had, mentors in the Nigerian community that, they were 10 years, 20 years my senior that, they were kind of, doing the same thing. And they had 4 or 5 properties. So I was kind of emulating them. So, as well. So I think, so it was just a little bit of the community impact and also, just my natural inclination towards finance and business.
And then I guess my question is then, like, so one thing you were talking about is like how you first got your first condo. You had a, I guess a figure in mind for when you're looking to start. But then you also talked about, partners and collaborators. So when did you make that transition, and what is that, I guess, what is ideal? When is an ideal point to make that transition from going solo to working with other investors?
Yeah, I think once you've proven out your strategy well, what I mean by that is, you've owned an asset and you've proven out. So in real estate, you have to have a strategy. And what I mean by that is, what are you doing? Is this an appreciation play? Meaning, are you in the East Coast or West Coast, and you're just, that you're just going for the ride, because the appreciation rate is very high, that, that's where your IRR is going to come from. Or,
as in like a slow play, like you're waiting for it to gain value.
Right, okay. Exactly. So that's what we call an appreciation play versus, you're actually depending on the tenants, the rents, the cash flow, right? So you have to understand which one you're going for, and there's no right or wrong answer. It really depends on the actual property and the region and the area and that kind of thing. So I think that's a very important piece. But I mean, it's just, at the end of the day, you just gotta, if you know that you're, you want to invest and you want to, make sure your money appreciates. The only other way is either stock market or real estate. It really isn't, there really isn't, at least, and there's crypto now, of course, as well. And that's valid as well. But I think real estate is just one of those, very natural thing where people just think, okay, if I have some money, try to, get in there somehow.
I guess my only thing is just that when it comes to real estate, and even, with crypto and all these things, there is opportunity to make money. And I think one thing you spoke about was having a defined plan or an approach when you go in, but that doesn't mean necessarily your plan is, guaranteed to work, right? Like you can still be subject to failure. So I'm not saying to discourage people, but I feel like, I'm in Georgia, I'm in Atlanta, right? Everybody is a real estate person. Everybody's a real estate guru. Everybody apparently has the ability to do it. But how do you differentiate between people who truly know what they're doing and who don't know what they're doing? Because you could be learning skills thinking that you're formulating this brilliant idea, but it can actually be terrible,
Yeah. So I get what you're saying, D Black. I think, yeah. So it actually took us 10 years of managing our own properties and, exiting, selling properties at the IRR that we were expecting, that we had, planned for, all of that, and also some growing pains in the beginning as well. My first properties, I didn't have landlord insurance on them. And, I had, it was a condo and I had a unit upstairs my unit was upstairs and leaked downstairs, and I had to pay $3,000 out of pocket. And, and through that experience, I knew, okay, I needed to make sure I have landlord insurance. So, all of that is, to me, is what I call sweat equity or growing pains, of you really learning the trade for yourself. And then after that, once you're successful and you can afford a little risk, then you can start doing limited partnership. You can start doing crowdfunding is another big area of real estate right now that, is really taking off.
You said crowdfunding?
Yeah, real estate crowdfunding. You familiar with that?
Mm-mm.
Yeah, so basically it's like how GoFundMe is, right?
Yeah.
It's based on that. It's a similar platform like that, but it's for investments, right? So basically, you have these commercial property companies that, what they do is they go out there, buy, an area downtown or a big high rise, for 20 million or whatever, and then they renovate it, and then they bring in new tenants, or they increase the rent, and then they exit, right? Meaning they sell the property at a gain, and then they move on to the next deal. So they use crowdfunding. They get some of their, so they put 20% down of their own money. They get 60% from the bank, and then the balance they get from limited partners through crowdfunding or through other ways. But crowdfunding, is allowed anybody to participate, as long as you know what you're doing, of course, and you have money. Some of these, crowdfunding platforms, they might have a minimum amount that you have to invest. The one that I recommend that I do deals on is it's called Real Crowd, and their deals are typically 25,000. Multiples of 25,000. All the way up to $1 million. But you would basically participate as a limited partner, and then the company would project a certain IRR, which is internal rate of revenue, and which is basically your profit on a year-to-year basis, and you just it's very passive. So you just put the money down, and then you're getting the cash flow, either quarterly distribution, or whenever they sell the property, then you get whatever 3x 4x that you put in. So anyway, so that's another area to play in. But again, I always advise people, take some time to buy something small first that you're comfortable with losing some money on, and really kind of learn yourself before you start doing flipping and other things like that. Yeah.
So I mean, even to
quick question. Sorry, Glenn. Quick question, Seyi. For the real, you say real crowd, right? What is the requirement? Do you have to be accredited to partake in stuff like that, or is it just open to the public to partake?
Yeah, so some deals are require accredited only. So accredited, for you guys that may not be familiar, just basically means the SEC has a certain label for certain investors that they title accredited investors, and those investors basically means that they're eligible to participate in certain alternative investments, such as crowdfunding, and basically it lets the SEC know that, hey, this guy has the financial standing to be able to withstand any major loss, right? So, and the only way to do that is either you have assets outside of your outside of your home, your primary residence. You have assets in excess of $1 million, or you make, I think, 300,000 AGI, on a yearly basis. So once if you qualify for either one of those, then you go through your broker, you get that certification, and then you can participate in deals that I think are really where you can get the maximum IRR for the risk exposure. So it's better to be accredited, but if you're not accredited, you can still participate. Fundraisers is one of my favorite ones for non-accredited investors.
Yeah, I was just about to say that as well. I participate in Fundrise also.
Yeah. Okay, great. Yeah, there's plenty of them out there, but Real Crowd is the one that that I'm most familiar with, that that we have most of our deals on. But yeah, so and to me, that actually, if you want to do something like on a Fundrise or something like that, and they have the minimum amount is something you're comfortable with, I think that's something you can try as well. But just know that those are they're in the alternative investment category, which means you need to make sure you're doing your due diligence on that project, and making sure that it's something that is a good fit for your portfolio.
Facts. Yeah, I actually participate. Just a corroborate or side with that, with Fundrise, and from my experience, just being a regular Joe Schmo. Basically, I just treated it like an alternate to savings, because you take a savings account, probably making what 0.0001%. But now I was actually able to be invested in multiple commercial properties managed by people that know that what they're doing for the most part and get a return. So I will just do something as simple as even like $200, $300 a month. I would just donate to it every month and just let it sit and then let it accrue and grow over time. And basically with some of these crowdfundings, you can actually get like dividends back on these properties. So it pays you to own the account. So I'm being paid to save essentially. And with Fundrise, you don't have to be accredited. And I think there is a minimum per month for you to get started. And it may require like a minimum down and a minimum per month. But after that, it is safer. I wouldn't say safer, but it is a well looked at and well researched and a pretty probably worthwhile way to invest if you don't want to be a landowner. You don't want to be a landlord and have to deal with people. Then that's an alternative as well, which is one thing that we'll get into. But kind of wanted to chime in on these notes as far as like the precarity of the real estate. Like in actuality, yeah, there's risks you could run into, but I feel like it's more so related to the nature of the deal that you received as opposed to just like, okay, like for the stock market, for instance, it can go up and down on a whim. It could be somebody said something about etc. company, stocks crashed, but real estate, it doesn't really fluctuate like that. Like I feel like a majority of the weight really falls into, okay, how much are you putting down? What are you getting for the property? Things could happen to a home, right? There could be a tornado or things like that. A pipe can break, but if you're doing it the right way, you would know, okay, I have to put money to the side to take care of my repairs if you're actually owning and maintaining the property. So there are things where you can actually evaluate the nature of the deal before you get into it. It isn't like you just kind of jumped in and then, oh, something happened. What's going on? Like, nah, there's a little bit more involved. I guess I imagine if you're going to get the Shays level, you're going to know the ins and outs. You're going to know your rent to value. You're going to know how much you need to put to the side. You're going to look at comps and see how much the home is worth compared to others. So it's like, I guess there's a lot more to it than kind of like what we're exposed to with the stock market on a day-to-day.
No, I think that was a really great breakdown because, it's so interesting because I just feel like I hear every other person thinking or saying that they're going to be a real estate investor, a real estate millionaire or multimillionaire.
Yeah.
I don't know, it gets presented as if it's something that anyone can just hop in and just easily do and, make a whole bunch of money doing. But there is a lot of complexity to it. And I guess it's similar to the stock market. You can lose your money very quickly if you don't know what you're doing.
Yeah, and then just a couple more points on that. So there is I guess a disadvantage of real estate is it's not as liquid as the stock market, meaning it is harder to, and fundraising may be a little bit more liquid, but typically once you put that money in that asset, you have to sell it first before you can get it back, right? So it can't be money that you need in the short term. But also there are some tax advantages in real estate that that makes real estate superior to stock market, right? You can write off so many expenses once you do have that property. Every whether it be trips or there's so many different tax advantages that you can use to kind of lower your tax premium by participating in it as well.
Yeah, so I just remember like a couple years ago, every time I talked to Seyi, because like to my cousin's point, we all think we've like done our research and we think we're ready to get into real estate. And every time I like feel like, okay, I think I have a plan, then I call Seyi and he always like send me back to reality. I'm like, you know what? Maybe I didn't think about that. Okay, it reset. I'm not ready yet. So like, but one of the top advice that Seyi told me though that I remember, because one of the things you always got to do, I think sometimes we accumulate like maybe a large sum of money, but one thing that you always got to think about is you have to always put away 3 to 6 months of your expense, right? Just because as savings that okay, this is not money that you want to throw into real estate. It's actual money that should be on the side. Then on top of that money, that's when you should then save to like maybe your 20 to 25% down payment for your real estate. So because sometimes we dilute our actual 3 to 6 month savings as our down payment savings, you know? So, and another, I think one of the other advice that I got from him was, for any decision you made, especially for us married folks on the call, like we have to make sure we get alignment with our spouse, right? You know, one thing that he mentioned is he mentioned we, like, you know, there's a keyword that Seyi used, say we. So a lot of the decision that they were making is a partnership in their household, right? So, and sometimes us men, we kind of, I know I do this a lot. I just go off and start making all this plan in my head, like, okay, I'm gonna do this, I'm gonna do this. I got this plan figured out. But you know, sometimes we forgot to like pull in our spouses and make sure they are along the journey with us, and they like, like definitely approve what we're thinking, because they are entering that journey, if either they like it or not. And usually if they say no, that shouldn't happen. So anyways, but yeah, just wanted to kind of give those few points in there as well.
Absolutely.
Let's talk about some of the plays taking place today in this tumultuous market. Seyi, can you shed some light on what would you say are the most popular, I guess, based on your experiences, the most popular plays right now in the market for real estate? If you're looking to own and manage real estate, what are some of the most popular plays? Or are there any particular states people are looking at to invest in for the purpose of owning the actual property or anything like that?
Yeah, I think the most popular play right now is in the South. Basically, what you're seeing is quite remarkable, because you have a lot of people from the West Coast and you have a lot of people from the East Coast that are coming to Texas, particularly Texas and Louisiana, and because some of these tech companies are coming as well. But and also part of it is also the remote work environment that we're in now, to where people are not tied to a certain location. So then now they realize, hey, I can sell my property in California that's $2 million, and I can come over to the South and get a mansion for half that price, and then still have more left over. So I think the South has a lot more room to grow in value as far as the real estate value versus the coast. And I think probably similar sentiment in the North as well. The only difference is the weather, of course, but I think if anywhere in the South will be a good place to look for investments, whether it be Florida, Louisiana, Texas, etc. So I think that would be a good region to start. But with that, I think you want to even hone it down further to places that have lower property tax, and that'd be for me, Louisiana was actually where I purchased, where we own most of our properties, and we're incorporated as an LLC there. And that was one of the biggest reasons why we were successful, was the property taxes that were so favorable. Now the bad side of that, I don't know if you guys are familiar with Louisiana, but basically, they have one of the lowest property taxes. I think the property tax is 1/5 of what you'll see in Florida, and maybe even 1/6 or 1/7 what you see in the East and West Coast. And that really allows you to retain a significant chunk of that cash flow that you're getting every month. So that $1,000 in rent, if I don't have to spend 150 of it towards property tax, maybe I only have to spend $50. That's an extra $100 that I can now use, to save some more, to buy the next property, or to pay down the loan. So it's a really big deal. So I think, with that consideration, I still think Louisiana is probably the most favorable place to look for a deal, in my opinion. We recently moved to Texas a couple of years ago, on a company move, and but we still haven't made any active deals as a direct landlord in Texas. We're still looking at Louisiana still has the most favorable numbers. So I think if you look at it from those perspectives, I think that would be a good place to to look for deals. It would be Louisiana or places like that in the South.
So it's like a couple things I wanted to add on or take away from that. Is double up questions. As far as making your first purchase in another state, like what are your feelings about that? Like if I'm in New Jersey and I said, you know what, my first purchase, I'm gonna buy a property in somewhere in the South. Would you advise for or against that, or do you feel like there's pros or cons to it depending on the situation?
The latter. So I think yeah, there's pros and cons. It would be preferable if you have somebody that you trust that's local to that asset, right? And so, but I wouldn't necessarily say, I wouldn't restrict yourself too much on the region. I would focus more on the value. The reason why I say that is, you have property management companies, that's local to each area. So, I have a friend of mine that, that's in California, and he's got properties all over Montgomery, Alabama. And, but he has family over there that can, kind of preside that. And then he has a commercial real estate management company that manages the assets. So it can be done. I would think, just look more for the deals to where, like I said, make sure the numbers are right. I think that's the most important thing before you start looking at whether or not you're local. But yeah.
And another point, you mentioned pretty much the moving of companies to some of these states, furthering, the reason that's why I used to buy. So particularly as a person looking to own property and rent it out to tenants, you're a landlord. So you're in the business of collecting rent. So like, why is it so important that we look at places where development is happening? Because I understand correctly as well, a good chunk of like this infrastructure bill is going to be going to parts of Ohio as well, to where there's expected to be more job growth and higher employment rates. Why are those things important to someone that's looking to actually own property and hopefully generate cash flow on rent?
Well, yeah, it's important because, that's all part of doing the due diligence, because you have to make sure that, wherever you're buying that property, that you're going to be able to get the appreciation that you need, right? So I would say, that's part of your whole due diligence is, okay, I'm trying to buy this. Okay, where is it at? Okay, what's the prospect for that area, right? Are there going to be, if it's an apartment complex or a condominium complex, okay, what food shops are close by? Are they planning any kind of new commercial projects around the area? And honestly, that's one of the kind of the disadvantage of being a single investor is you're kind of not in the know of some of those, hotspots is what I call them, where, in any given town, you know that, the government's going to, announce a certain project for this area. There are some, some networks that have privy to that information that you as an individual may not, may not have. So I think at the end of the day, you have to do your research. I think Ohio, that's a great point. The Midwest is, I'm not trying to advocate only for the South. It's just, the South is where I'm most familiar with. But yes, you're right. Ohio is another good place. Just look for places where the property values haven't kind of, gone as fast, hasn't appreciated as fast as the coast. And I think, so that way, that you still have room to grow, and you don't have to worry about, you purchasing right at the top. And then, you certainly don't want to purchase something and then it loses value. So it's all about doing that homework and really understanding the local market, understanding, what the future projects are good, are going on in that area. And then just striking it while it's hot.
Now you're a landlord. Tell us what that landlord life is like. Like, I'm not going to expose any of your tenants, but if you have a story to tell, feel free. But what is landlording like for people that may be interested in saying, okay, I got my property. They don't understand that they're more than just an investor at that point. They are actively managing that property. So if there's a fix that needs to be done, if there's a leaky pipe, you have to navigate all of that. You have to figure out the fix for that. And hopefully you're saving for it. So tell us about your landlord experience and what's got you through it and what made you say, hey, you know what? I want to continue being a landlord.
Yeah. Where do I start? Well, it's interesting because, when I started buying properties, I wasn't really thinking, man, I'm going to be a landlord. It's going to be a pain, right? It was really just more of the drive of, okay,
give me my money.
I'm going to buy my first asset. I'm going to, get cash flow and then, rinse and repeat. But I remember, like, my first asset, I was actually scrubbing the floor myself for the tenant to come and move in, and I didn't actually hire a cleaning company, because I wanted to get that experience of, okay, this is what it really feels like for me to, manage and own the property myself. But as far as the tenants, I think there's no, there's stereotypes, but from my experience, there's really no. You'd be surprised every time that you think there's a stereotype. There, it just kind of, you'll see an outlier that surprises you. But I've gotten lucky enough that I haven't had to do an eviction. I think a lot of it has to do with being able to screen properly. I think take your time screening your tenants. Don't go for the easy, quick money. Don't go for necessarily somebody that's ready to move in tomorrow versus, a more qualified person that, may move in a month from now, right? So I think, don't be greedy, and also kind of show the tenant that you care, that you're not just another Joe Schmo real estate, right? Or, apartment. You don't want to have an apartment complex kind of feel. You want to differentiate yourself from the apartment complexes, because that's, again, people that are renting at, sub $400,000 homes, it's it's people that are moving from apartment complexes and they want their own space. So it's kind of like their starter home. So that's why they end up renting, to build their credit up before they can buy their own home. So I would say, treat the asset like it's your own mom and pop shop and it's your own small business, and let the tenant know that you care. And if you do right by them, most of the time, and you screen them properly, then they're going to stay. They're likely to stay longer. I've got, I have tenants that's been there in our properties for 5 years, and, they're not planning on leaving. So, and I'm fair back to them by not increasing their rent, even though the market calls for it, but I know that, the long play is better than trying to make an extra, $200 or whatever. So I think, so those are all things that I've learned throughout the process over the last 11 years, is, just treat it like, it is your house. And I think the tenants, will, if you get the right tenant, of course, by screening them well, I think they will appreciate it and they're more likely to stay.
So yeah, I got a couple of quick questions. I lied. So speaking about being a landlord, one thing that I heard is just like, well, when you get investment property, like make an LLC, so the person's not paying you, but they're quote unquote paying the company. That shows a little bit of distance, but at the same time, what you're saying, you're there. You show that you care, but it's just like, hey, we're not buddy. You're my tenant, and understand you're my tenant, but I'm also here to help you out. I had slight experience with having tenants, and we got very fortunate where the tenants were family friends, and that's who we rented out to. So we didn't increase the rent, but there are things that happen. So let's say like a pipe burst, right? So they would not pay us a full rent, but they'll pay for something to get fixed. In return, we had a basement space. Like, hey, if you want to store anything, we're not charging you extra for the basement space to store anything that you want. There's a washer and dryer down there. There's infinite amount of space you use. Like, it's a whole other apartment down there. And we're just like, cool. Another thing was taking out a line of credit against the home. So I was put onto that way late in the game, where it's just like, hey, you need renovations, don't take it a loan. How much is the house worth? Take out a line of credit. It doesn't have to be the full value of the home or whatever you have left over. Like, okay, you estimated, let's say the value of the house is 300 grand. Let's say the renovation cost is 100 grand. So you take out 100 grand as a line of credit, and paying back that quote unquote loan is a lot cheaper than taking out an actual personal loan or a big loan itself. So it's like $200 or $300 a month that you're paying back on $100,000 over X amount of time. So can you speak to anything to that? Is that a good idea, bad idea? Is that good for people who are first owning homes or are able to pay off a certain amount? Or when is that a good play to use, if
Can
at
we
all?
break it down into 3 parts then? Because you mentioned a couple good things there. Starting an LLC versus owning it yourself. Can we talk on that one first, and then we could talk about the line of credit? So can you talk about the LLC to Chunky's point? Like, at one point, do we need to determine, okay, I should start this as myself, or I should start this as an LLC? And what are the advantages to doing so?
Yeah, start it yourself. You don't need to have an LLC right away. I would say, when you get to multiple properties, maybe 4 or 5 or above, then you want to start to, you want to now kind of have it be its own entity. But the reason why I say that you don't need to get an LLC from the start is, if any good lawyer can get to the individual that's behind the LLC when it comes to lawsuits and things like that. So I would focus more on making sure that you're protected, that you have liability insurance and all of that, all the things I mentioned, landlord insurance and all that. I would, those are ways to actually protect yourself versus, I have an LLC. An LLC is going to cost you, $250 to $400 depending on the state to establish, and you got to maintain it. I'm not, I encourage people to get LLC once you actually have enough numbers to justify, spending that money on a yearly basis to maintain that company. Because, once you get it, you have to maintain it, and you have to have an agent that represents you, and, as you're renewing that registration. So I think, you want to focus, you want to be as lean as possible on your first asset. And, I would say, focus on, just, the cash flow and focus on the numbers rather than trying to get the lawyers involved right away.
And then the second part to that, handling repairs. And I think, Chunky, you correct me if I'm mistaken, you mentioned being able to work out a situation where the tenant would pay less in month because they're probably contributing towards the repair costs.
So I was just using that as an example. At the end of the day, I didn't think that was a good idea. We were just very fortunate of the people that we had that were pretty cool. But grand scheme of things, that everyone you're going to rent to is going to be like a family friend, and it's going to be copacetic with that situation where you have a mutual understanding, which is like, hey, you pay for that. There were no arguments the entire time they were there. So every time something happened, they were able to chip in and assist. Like I said, we were fortunate. I wouldn't suggest that, because it's just like, at the end of the day, someone's just like, no, I don't feel like paying for this, or you know what, I don't want to be here anymore because I'm always paying to fix something. Even though you knock off the money on the rent, I don't think that's a good idea. But I'm saying, like, for us, it kind of worked out, and I think I was tying that into like the line of credit for the house, right? At a certain point, I think the house that my grandmother owned was built in like 1918 or 1915 or something like that. The shit was over like 100 years old. So there's a lot of things that needed to be done. But she bought that house at like 30 or 40 grand. So it was like absolutely nothing. So the value of it, yeah, the value of it shot through the roof. But everything in there was just old, right? So it was a smart idea to take out a line of credit against it, to say like, hey, like, the house is actually owned. Only thing we're paying is property tax, which, Glenn, to your point, property tax in New Jersey is like ridiculous. Like I don't even pay that much, not even close to that where I live right now. And it's just like, dude, it was like, I think it was like close to $4,000 a quarter. I'm like, that's insane. So
we're paying salaries, bro.
Yeah, and I was just like, yeah, I was like, that's just crazy. I'm getting away from the point. Anyway, so back to like the line of credit, Glenn. That'll be like my next thing. It's just like, is it smart to take out a line of credit against a home depending on your financial situation, that you're pretty much paying less back? And if you're pretty much grossing a lot in that rent, so it was 3 floors, you're talking about $2,000 per floor, you're talking about within a month, you're already making the property tax you're already paying. So all that is just income in your pocket. the end of the day, it's like, hey, I want to do a big renovation so I can charge more or just keep things from breaking so quickly.
Yeah, that's a lot of good point, Chunky. I think HELOCs is a very sophisticated tool, and it's a tool that, to me, you need to be either mid-level or expert, in real estate markets for you to be able to navigate it, the right way. I mean, I don't discourage it at all, but I just, I think it's better because the risk there is, if you take the HELOC and then your home depreciates in value significantly, and then that's how people get underwater, right? That's what happened in 2008 when people were doing a lot of those derivatives market. People were getting loans that they had no business getting. They were doing HELOCs and things like that. So I would say you want to make sure that whatever you take out, that you have a very nice cushion, right? And so that way, if the market moves either way, you don't have to be underwater. But how you laid it out, I think it's great that it worked out. It is another way for you to get added value or create value off of an existing asset. So I think it's good for the right investors.
And for people that don't know, HELOC is home equity line of credit, and basically it's a line of credit that you would kind of borrow against your home based on how it's appreciated over time versus how much you owe over it. But for more details, Google search HELOC. But other than that, I guess, can we also speak to one last thing on the landlording, like, I guess, handling repairs and contractors? Well, with landlording a condo, is that any different? Because I know some people that own condos, they pay HOAs, and depending on the nature of the claim, whether there's flooding or whatever, I think at some point the housing authority kind of takes care of some repairs, depending on how that works in the condo association. So interesting that you took the route of actually doing condos as opposed to small multifamily homes. Can you talk about what that experience was like getting repairs, or what makes owning condos in that sense unique, as opposed to someone that may just own like a single family home or a multifamily home?
Yeah, it's unique because your neighbor is, you share a common wall with your neighbor. So, so you do have to deal with some of that, neighborly principles. Sometimes if you don't have the right neighbors, or maybe your tenant is the bad neighbor, so that can be a disadvantage. But the reason for us why we just kind of stuck with it was because we knew, okay, all the exterior is going to be taken care of by this HOA amount that we're paying every month, and it's already factored in into the calculations. And so it was just a way for us to reduce that risk. We didn't, I didn't want to have to also get a lawn mowing company, a pressure washing company, all of those things that you'll have to do for single family in order to upkeep it and maintain it. So to us, we saw it more as a way for us to reduce the risk, just by paying this flat fee, and then all this gets taken care of, and then I, as a landlord, have to deal with the interior only. So with the interior, there are still some risk, right? You still have, you got interior cabinets that you want to make sure you're insured, that you want to make sure it's insured, because your HOA typically wouldn't cover the inside, and that's why you want to make sure you have the landlord policy. But also you want to make sure your tenant gets a renter's, or highly, for me, I don't force them to do it. I highly encourage it. But the tenants tend to be conscientious enough to get it. So I never had to force them to do it. But that is something that I would strongly recommend that you make sure your tenant gets. That reduces the risk on your end as well. If there's a flooding issue or anything like that, and their clothing gets damaged or anything, then they can easily get reimbursed through their insurance. So I would say, as far as renting with condos, you just have to, it's the same thing as, renting with single family. As far as screening the tenants, you're going to have good and bad tenants. So you just have to, kind of, through, it's kind of one of those things where you just kind of, you try it the first time, and if you just kind of tweak it. If you get a tenant that, that look good on paper, sometimes you get a tenant that looks good on paper, but they end up, being a nightmare. And, so like I said, you just have to make sure that you do your due diligence, you screen them well, you do the background checks. And then also, I always ask for a significant amount of deposit. I usually ask for a deposit that's equal to the first full month's rent. And the reason why I do that, and a lot of times I'll have a lot of tenants that they automatically get screened out because of that. And, I do that in order for me to retain enough money from them in case they damage the property, right? So those are things that I've learned through the years that's worked for us. A lot of times people will go to apartments, and apartments will have, hey, $300 down and you can come stay with us. And, I lose some tenants or potential tenants due to that, but I'm okay with that because I know that that's worked for me. And I think those same strategies would work in a single family as well. I think for us, it was just, we started with it, because of circumstance, because that's what we could afford. And then once we kind of hone in on what works for that asset, we just, started purchasing more, and it's worked out beautifully. But again, like I said, it's just the basic things applies for, make sure you highly encourage your tenant to get insurance. Try to make sure that you get enough deposit from them, so that way they have something to lose, and then just enjoy the ride.
And another important piece to that was determining how much you should charge rent. Because in my real estate journey, my impossible real estate journey in New Jersey, one of the key things I have to look at essentially is probably like even a part of the make or break of the deal is how much rent would you possibly be collecting? What is one way that you do that? How do you just pick a number out of the sky? Like, I feel like giving you this much, or is there actually some metric behind it where you're looking at and analyzing or looking at how much other units been rented for?
Yeah, so there's that, RTV, which is that rent to value ratio I mentioned before, and I think that to me is the biggest key whenever I'm looking at an asset. If they're sub $400,000 in value, 400,000 or less, you want to try to get it as close to 1% as possible of that value in rent every month. So, the example of $100,000 property, you want to try to collect close to 1,000 or better every month. And I think when you do that, then, it'll give you enough room for any, issues. I would say, actually going back to Chunky's example, I'd say you were probably one of the lucky ones that had a good experience renting to somebody they know. Typically for me, I don't prefer to rent to people that I know, because there's that familiarity that can come to play where, your tenants may exhibit, non-tenant behaviors because they know you, right?
I'm paying you this much. I know you, Chunky. I ain't paying
you. Right.
Yeah. So we've had issues like that. Not gonna lie. So
I'm broke,
Chunky. And I'll let you know to speak on that.
And I wouldn't even commingle the rent with the maintenance expenses and all of that. If all of that should be spelled out in your contract of, okay, what parts you're responsible for and what part the tenant's responsible for. For us, the line there is if it's something that broke as a result of natural usage of the equipment, microwave or any of the appliances, then we cover it. But if I see a dent on a microwave, obviously I'm gonna fix it and then I'll charge it back to you. You'll have to pay for that. So that's where we cover the maintenance. Again, it's worked for us, and we charge a little bit of a higher premium, because of that. But any actual damage to the unit, then we would be able to charge from that deposit. But generally, I try not to commingle tenants with friends.
So we were doing it for a while. So we just had family just stay with us like over time. And like the one situation that it did happen, the guy didn't pay rent at all, right? He's like, oh, well, I can't pay, blah, blah, blah. And, at the time, my grandmother, I was letting her know, I was just like, listen, just he's a family friend. That's cool, but he needs to go because we're not collecting anything. I'm not trying to be rude, not trying to be mean, but we kind of factor that into what you pay. So it was a very negative situation because it took a while just to get him out. Like we had to sit down and talk to him like, hey, it's nothing against you, but we're losing money.
Right.
We know you're going to work because you're leaving. So you're paying for other things. So you're deciding to do that. So that's the result of your action. She's also rented to Section 8 people when she was alive. And that was a pain in the ass there. Guaranteed money, no doubt, but they weren't the best of people. Yeah. And like I said, we got fortunate with the last two people that were there before the house was sold. They were very, very like nice. One was super young, good family friend, would do stupid stuff like the third floor was vacant. She'll go up there and like do what she's not supposed to do. And I would just sit down and talk to her. I was like, hey, like we're cutting you a good deal. We understand. I get it. You're young, whatever case may be, but just be respectful, right? At the end of the day, just respect us for giving this huge level of leniency. They always paid, so we didn't have a problem there, and they were always like forthcoming. Like I got a phone call one time, like, "Hey, the tub is broken." I'm like, "Cool, like what's going on?" Well, I don't know. I was like, "Well, give me a video call." And she'll turn it on, and I'm like, "Oh, just that screw to the right, just screw it in." And she was like, "No, I'm not touching it." I'm like, "Damn, now I got to go all the way over there and fix it." So I went there and I fixed it because like it was such a lag because we didn't have any people that we were contracted with, like plumbers. We have to call and wait and see what their availability was. And it's just like, hey, the more we let this go, the more it's going to be an issue. The more of an issue, the more we're going to pay at the end of the day. So it's just like, all right, one of those things is that I did the landscaping too. I was like, man, I got to rake these leaves. I got to mow this lawn. I got to make sure this grows. It was just a pain. So that sweaty that you're talking about gave me an understanding like, hey, these are things I need to lay out, right? Whether I'm going on Angie's list, whether like I'm talking to friends of friends, whether I get to know somebody like, hey, what can you do? How well can you do it? If I'm in a jam, can I call you? Okay, cool. Now, the other question I have to that, if you have a really good individual maintenance company, like, do you just pay them their rate or do you like figure out a way how to retain them? Like, it's all about networking, right? It's all about keeping those people like on speed dial if you need them. What would be the best advice to keep those people pretty much at your hip to give them a call in an emergency for them to roll without any issue?
Yeah, I think that's a good point. So that's actually one of the other things that it really helped our asset grow well, our portfolio grow significantly. Is we had a dedicated handyman that was good in basic plumbing, basic electrical, and also sheetrocking and things like that. And he worked for us for about 7 years, where he was a contractor and we just pulled him as needed, but we had enough work for him that he always put us at the top of the list. So I think that is one of the very important things to have, especially if you're going to have multiple properties, is you want to make sure that you have a handyman. I always prefer going with the handyman, the one that's does not incorporate it, versus, again, when you're starting off, versus an Angie's List, or well, not Angie's List, but versus a maintenance company that that's charging $50 an hour rates, versus a handyman that maybe charging half of that. So I think those are ways that you can really squeeze those expenses down, so that way you can maximize the cash flow. But I mean, for me, I actually my maintenance man, I actually met him at the parking lot of Home Depot. When we met, and I just gave him a small job, and he did a great job, and then before you knew it, he became my main maintenance guy. So I think but he was charging pennies on the dollar, versus the standard rate. He didn't give me an hourly rate. He would just tell me, hey, to fix this toilet is this much, and so I was able to save a lot of money going through him. I mean, obviously with big jobs, you want to make sure that that you go through somebody that's licensed and insured, but when it comes to your first property, you're gonna have these the toilets leak and this and that, small jobs that you shouldn't be paying so much for. So But yeah. So that's a big big part of being a landlord is finding a good handyman that's also very reasonably
Yeah.
priced.
I was gonna say I learned that the hard way too. We had the neighborhood handyman that would come by, and something
And
would
with the
break.
shopping cart with all the miscellaneous tools in the shopping
So like
cart.
he didn't have the miscellaneous tools, but he
And
just
tennis
showed
balls.
up whenever. He showed up like
Right.
when I say whenever, it's just like, hey, come Thursday to come fix it. Yeah, I'll be there Thursday in the morning. Dude came by next week Friday and was just like, oh, you still need that fixed? And it was just like it's one of the things like family friend type people, right? So like we didn't mind giving him work, but it's like, damn, motherfucker, like I've been waiting and this shit has gotten worse. And he'll do it, and it's just like
family friend. Oh, it's a family friend.
It's $150. Like, bro, you just only thing you did was fix the pipe. The material is not even worth that much, but you charging us a liver and a spine to do this shit. And it's just like I laugh about it because it's funny now, but back then
I know what you're talking
You
about.
got some suspect family friends, Cody.
Yeah, hey, nice
Keeping
guy,
those
but like,
expenditures too slim. They're too
Yeah.
slim. That's too slim.
Like,
When you gotta
Nah,
that's not what Shay was
knows.
talking about when he said keep it slim. That's too slim.
where me and Chunky from, every area has its local handyman that got half a Home Depot in his shopping cart.
Yeah.
Always got like some sheetrock in his shopping
a
cart.
piece of sheetrock. And it's just like not even a whole sheet.
I got some copper pipe. You need some copper pipe? This is
And it's just like
that's
you don't
all I
even
need
have
to
his
know
own
right
tools,
there.
right? Like, oh yeah, you got a hammer. Like, motherfucker, you the handyman. You don't have a hammer.
I'm straight.
So like, I make light of it to prove a point. Like look what you're saying. Like, find someone. Make sure they don't have to be reputable, but make sure they're trustworthy, right? Make sure if you call them, they can actually do the job and do it right, and not show up a week later and not charge you X amount of dollars when you know, like, all right, the cost of the material is like $10 from Home Depot. The labor that you're doing is 10 to 20 minutes worth of labor. But how the fuck are you charging me $150 for this? Like, I don't have the time to do it because I'm nowhere near it. So I have to, quote unquote, rely on you to get it done. But like I said, I make it a joke. Like, the dude was a great guy, known him for many, many years. But the worst handyman I've ever fucking dealt with. The worst.
Yeah, and I guess that's one of the advantages of if you own a property locally, then you can do a lot of the maintenance stuff yourself. Because a lot of these things is just common sense. You know how to clean out your duct work. Make sure your dryer vent is clear of debris. Cleaning out your AC. All those things. Those are things that you can do. Pretty. A little YouTube. So I think that is one of the advantages of if you have a local property that you can get to.
I gotta just say, shout out to the hood handymen out there with the shopping carts.
The one piece of sheetrock.
The one construct. They got a construct on one foot. They got a lugs on the other foot. You know what I mean? Yo, gunshots to all the hood
PVC
handymen
pipe
out there.
copper.
Oh boy.
Out.
Forget solder. I'm gonna duct tape it.
I love you. Got duct tape, got some glue, some crazy glue. Yo, shout out to the hood. We got love for you here, man. But I think that's another point made too, as well as being a landowner. Most people don't suspect is the temperament and the mentality behind it. You, especially if you're local, you may have to talk nice to some of these contractors. You may have to go out there, put yourself physically out there, and try to get jobs and make sure people are following up with that. I can imagine, especially if you have like a home that you're running, there's a pipe, something that has to be fixed right away, that's affecting the hospitality of your tenants and the living conditions. Yeah, you're going to have a network. So it also requires like an additional mindset to doing it. Like, it's not something that you play as, especially because it's your money that you're talking about and your asset. It's something that you have to actively manage and maintain. It's your next baby, basically. And that's part of the mindset that's needed when you're actually looking to own the property. So I guess that's why it also helps to know, like, crowdfunding, for example, or even REITs, real estate investment trust you can invest in and not actually have to deal with that. The returns that you see are may not be as great right away, but it's also a way you could gain dividends on that and not have to actually be there or deal with real estate agents or landlord or like tenants or HOAs or anything like that. So go ahead, Fran.
Yeah. So quick question, Shay. So you said looking at a state is fine. You should not look at the location, but really look at the numbers. So, and you also mentioned, how like may possibly using, cheaper repair guys if possible for your first, for your first property. So, do you have any tips or on how to find good handyman, especially even locally, or especially when you out of state or you're not local to that location. So do you have any experience with that or tips on how people can find good ones?
Yeah. So if it's non-local, if the asset is is a different state or even a different city, then I would highly suggest you get a manager. Obviously you have to pay for that, but that's part of the I wouldn't suggest that you try to manage it actively remotely. That's recipe for failure to me. So I think if you're not local, if the asset is not local to you, then I would say get to a good property management company. Make sure they're you strike a deal with them. They might offer you 10% off. They might charge you 10%. You negotiate it down to 7%. All of that, and get a good reputable one, and then they should have a network of handy people that you can use for your maintenance, but obviously that's not the leanest way, that's not the cheapest way to operate, but again, I would rather have an asset that I know is going to double in value, and that's not remote, and have it actively managed by a property management company, versus an asset that's not growing as fast locally. So I think focus on the numbers, but if you do end up getting an asset remotely, then I would say hire a good management company and then use their resources to get the good to get the best handyman. And a lot of times those management companies will already have established deals with those local handyman. So and you can always, but if you're local, then some of the things we already mentioned. Go to Home Depot, go to Lowe's, and the ones that that want it the most. Sometimes they do the best job. Because if they're the one chasing you around the parking lot and asking for work, then that's pretty much you can give them a shot with something small and then see if they're dependable and then kind of build that relationship with them. But if it's out of state, then yeah, definitely want to get somebody to look at it for you.
And I can actually speak to that to some degree of the personal experience. After I lost hope in New Jersey, I started to look Midwest, and shout out to Bigger Pockets too, because this is how I was actually able to make a lot of connections. Bigger Pockets, if you're not familiar, is a website pretty much where real estate investors, landlords, tenants, contractors, the like, they all kind of meet there, and you're able to network and basically meet with people locally that are selling properties. And that's one thing I would recommend from my end also, is get with people that, in the areas, get their ears, try to get as much information from them as you can. And I realize that people are willing to help you if you show that you're doing your homework. You're not just looking for someone to just drop you answers the whole time. Show that you're like invested in this as an endeavor and that you're doing your homework. And it's so much easier to get information from people that are actually invested in your local market. But as far as my venture looking Midwest, I was looking particularly in Ohio. The first thing that I did was find a realtor in Ohio, one in particular that actually had experience with investing in multifamily properties, because I knew that's what I wanted to do. I wanted to buy them, generate cash flow every month by collecting the rents. So one of the main things he told me is like, hey, he had experience with actually managing property in Ohio. And his name is Stephen Wilson, by the way, if you're looking for a realtor in Ohio, shout out to Stephen Wilson. Basically, he had a personal experience with actually managing properties himself. So he was already, and he also had experience with people that were out of state investors as well. So he already gave me the rundown. He's like, hey, you're going to need a property management company. A lot of them are familiar with some of the contractors in the area. So he gave me like a complete list of all the property management companies in Ohio and in the areas that I was looking at and all their affiliations, a list of contractors and everything of that to the sort. So especially when you look and you need a real estate agent, you need a good one. And my recommendation is find one that has experience in what you're trying to do. because then he was actually able to outline the process for me. And it wasn't like a lot of guesswork I had to do on the ground, especially being someone that's from out of state. So finding a good realtor is a key, as well as, you know, a lot of the times they can connect you with those property management companies, where from that point, you can actually start talking about what the percentage is, what affiliations they have, and how they can help you.
Absolutely.
So let's get into the last couple final points. I know it was one of the things that are itching, because it seems like with any market, there's always these new trends. So Seyi, I just wanted to get your take lastly on the tiny home trend that's happening right now, where people are turning anything into a home. And then as well as like short-term rentals and Airbnbs. Like, what's your take on those approaches or strategies to real estate? Do you think any of them are valid, or anything that you're interested in personally?
Yeah, they're both valid. Actually, my next, one of, our target next investment would be, an asset that we're gonna on the beach that we're gonna use for Airbnb. So I think these online marketplaces for homes, I think that is very legit, and those are ways that we're basically inserting value into the system, and a lot of properties now are appreciating even more, just based on that traffic play. Airbnb has really taken off over the last few years, and I think that's another play that if you do your research well, and the certain number of traffic that you're going to be getting, I think that's another good temporary lodging is a very good play. And specifically in Texas, we have Galveston right here, which is about 20 minutes south of Houston, and and that's they have a nice beach over there, and so there's a lot of good assets over there that have been appreciating significantly in value. I think I think Galveston properties are appreciating at a 10% rate versus Houston, which is about 7%. So I think if you're looking for appreciation play, I think Airbnb is asset is a good place to be. The only thing to be careful about is you have to understand that you have more administrative costs, administrative expenses, operational expenses, because you have a higher turnover as a result of that higher traffic. So you're gonna need a cleaning crew that's going more often than a long-term stay. So which means that you could have your property would need to be maintained more often, and then you might need to change out your carpet and things like that more frequently. So the operational cost is a little bit more. Actually, it's significantly more. But what you want to do is you want to make sure that you can get that back in your cash flow. So, but yeah, absolutely, I'm a big fan of it. I look to hopefully add that to the portfolio in the next year. As far as tiny homes, I think they've been around for a while. It's I think, but it seemed at the time that they were kind of gimmicky, but it seems like now that they've been proven, and there's a lot of good projects out there. A lot of schools are enrolling different designs and stuff like that. So I think it's cool, but I don't know from an investment standpoint. I don't know enough about it to actually try to use it as a form of investment. But it's one of those trends that we just have to see as it continues to develop. But I think it's really innovative. The types of materials that they're using, it's like it's groundbreaking versus your conventional products for your home. So I think it's cool at this point, but I don't know if it's something that you necessarily want to bank on from an investment standpoint. I mean, you can always try your luck at it, but you just have to know it's less proven out there, so you have to understand it's going to be a little bit higher risk.
Understood. Well said. I'm not surprised. So let's get into the final thoughts. Seyi, what are some tips, tools, resources you think that people could use on their real estate journeys, or any that you would recommend personally?
Yeah, I would say get a good real estate evaluator app that you can, just plug in, when you see an asset, somewhere in the neighborhood, you can just be able to, plug in some numbers and it'll spit out some projection for you. So one that I use is, by the way, this is, this plug is not even, I'm not getting, and I'm not endorsing them or anything. It's just what I use and what I recommend to others. But it's called Property Evaluator app, and it's on Google, Android, or Apple store as well. So it's basically, you plug in the basic numbers, how much you're going to collect in rent, or you expect to collect in rent, what the value of the home is, and it'll kind of print out the nice 10-page report on it'll do some kind of projection analysis for you. If you hold the property for a year, 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, and what do your numbers look like? So I think that really gave me a good framework to be able to evaluate properties the right way, right? Because at the end of the day, if you're not making an IRR, internal rate of revenue, higher than the stock market, then why go through all this hassle? Why don't you just put your money in REITs, like you said, G? Or why don't you just invest in, ETFs that are, problem free, and, not problem free, but they're passive, and you don't have to, worry about your tenant not paying. So I think you have to know what the additional value you're getting by going into real estate. It could just be a diversity play, right? You're just trying to diversify from stocks, right? And that's fine too. But just know what you're doing. Just know what your strategy is and what you're trying to get out of it. So I think if you look at it that way, then I think you'll be able to hopefully make a better decision. But like we all said here, everybody's doing it. People always tell you about the success, not so much the failures, but but there are right ways to do it. And usually if it sounds too good to be true, chances are it is. You see a lot of media hype nowadays on social media, a lot of, quote unquote experts that, have followers, and they, put out all kinds of stuff out there. But at the end of the day, there's nothing that beats a tangible asset. So an asset that I can hold in my hand that I know has value, and, and it's, it has value for years to come. And that, to me, that's the only way. The proven asset that we have still is real estate. And so I think you just have to do your due diligence. You have to make sure that you get the right app. You make sure that you're honest with the evaluation. Don't you can even put in your maintenance expenses that you're expecting, and it'll spit out exactly if you're a lot of folks are buying properties, and they're paying the expenses out of their pocket, and and they're not adding that to the equation. So I think you just have to be honest with the analysis, and I think if you have a good app, that's a good way to do that. And then just go out there and see what the market looks like, and then take a swing at it. And I think everybody should have a chance to do it at least once, learn the lesson, and then determine if it's right for them after that.
Thank you. Any other thoughts from the panel before we close? I think Shay really summed that up really well. I'm really glad we had him on today. Thanks, Fran, for the plug.
Yeah, no, I just had a joke on Shay, man. Shay, are you taking a shot at NFTs right now? Because you're talking about intangible asset that you can touch and feel. I felt a little bit attacked with that comment.
Let me tell you about
oh God.
Francis, let me tell you about NFTs, man.
Tell me, please.
Right now, it's kind of like what crypto was a couple years ago. It's like, it's real, it's legit. I'm not anti-NFTs, but it's just people buy into the hype so early and prematurely and not understanding it fully. And there's strategies that people they term it as rug pull. Like people, do the rug pull. Basically what they do is they'll have these NFTs and they'll have a celebrity market it for them, 6ix9ine, FY, for example. And then everybody will get in, all the normal people will get in, and then they'll pull the rug. Basically, they'll suck all the liquidity out of that NFT. and then the regular common people are left with nothing. So I think so you have to know what you're doing, with any of these things. I have crypto. I have some plays in crypto, and I have some plays on blockchain as well. But my point is, if you buy too much into the hype, then you can make the wrong decisions. And don't put your rent money in any of those things for sure.
No, I'm just playing with you. No, I'm a huge. No, it's funny because we'll talk about it later. But yeah, but thanks for the comment.
All right.
I'll leave it at that.
he always got to do a jab. He did the same thing with Sika when he was on. And I'm like, come on. All right. The viewpoints presented in today's discussion are solely our opinions and should not be used to supplement or replace the advice that you may receive from a real estate professional or your financial advisor, or at best, your plain damn common sense. Please use this content for informational and educational purposes. Even though there were a lot of gems dropped here today, feel free to pick and choose what you want to use. Like that rhyme, that is so dope. I impress myself every day. Anyways, for more content, learn more about the podcast, feel free to check us out at Jerk Jollof Collar Pod on Instagram. Podcast episodes drop every Wednesday. Stay tuned for the outro to learn digital ways to reach us. If you want to reach Seyi, you might have to drop a link there as well over there on the Instagram. Have people blowing you up. Other than that, be sure to like, share, follow, and subscribe. Leave us a review on your platform of choice as well. Thank you for chopping with us. See you all again next week. And yes, shout out to Heritage Toy Group, Seyi's own personal line of Yoruba toys, trying to keep us in tune with the culture. And we'll have to pull that Rep Yours back up from first season that we dropped the Rep Yours on that one. So We'll definitely pull that one back up as well for the people. All right. Until next time, y'all, stay safe, stay blessed, stay peace up. Don't slap nobody. Try to restrain yourself. Peace.
Peace.
And that concludes today's episode, but that doesn't mean the conversation has to end. As a matter of fact, feel free to check us out at JJC Podcast on Facebook, Instagram, or Twitter for our post-discussion question following the release of this episode. If you are a Black or minority business owner or professional that would like to be featured on the Rep Yours segment of our show, or a listener with some general feedback for the podcast panel, feel free to shoot us an email at jjcpod@gmail.com. As always, likes and comments are always appreciated. Be sure to subscribe or follow to be notified when the next episode releases. And until then, stay safe, stay blessed. Peace.